This is the Hot Meals kiosk proposal, proposed by Hunter Wilcox, myself.
And Amar Gibson.
So the first thing we're going to be looking at is the agenda. We will be looking at the entire scope of the kiosk project, particularly the location, breakdown schedule, the expedition plan, Gantt and flow charts, and the risk management. There are three main considerations when deciding the location, those being foot traffic, accessibility, and demand. Based on these, the University Center and Cruz Plaza. We compared these three locations based on the considerations and further considerations, and our final decision was the University Center. This was primarily because it has the highest foot traffic. It's definitely probably the most accessible and safe. And we do expect there to be high demand because there's other food options there as well. So people will just go in there looking for food, and this will just be another option. There's also a lot of space in case of a line buildup at the kiosk, and it'll provide easy maintenance because it's inside. So next we'll go into the development plan, which we've broken down into several sections. The work breakdown schedule breaks down every tasks that we'll go through in the entire project, starting from the ordering and ending on our first stocking. It's been broken down into tasks and subtasks with durations and deadlines. These durations and deadlines do include time off for our schedule. And it also lists at the bottom the parties responsible for deliverables. These parties are important because everybody that's involved in this project needs to be known and stated ahead of time in case anything goes wrong. Levels. So there's not going to be any confusion about what happens in between. Next, we have the expedited plan. The entire project should last around a month and a half with time before the deadline. Based on the work breakdown schedule, the main events that could end up being behind schedule are the kiosk delivery, finished electrical, and inventory delivery. To ensure that the timeline stays on track, we'll consistently check on the progress of tasks. And if any fall behind schedule, we have that 12-day buffer before the end of the final deadline that we can work with. So we can push things forward and kind of stretch it. That's what those 12 days are for, so that we don't end up right at the end without any time to do anything. You can also see the flow chart that we included, which shows how the flow of tasks is going to go from beginning to end, all the way from that ordering to the final stocking. It just highlights where we go from one task to the next, that precedence. It's almost like a staircase down to the end.
Okay, moving on to the estimated budget. So we have a list of all of our total costs, and then we have the total costs on the side. So for our kiosk, that is going to be $17,500. Our signage, making sure people know where our kiosk is located, that's going to be $100. Our security is going to be $80, which consists of just cameras to make sure, nothing bad happens, make sure that the area is secured. For the total electrical cost, which is the rough in and the finish, that's going to be $1,300. For the delivery, that's going to be $1,000. For unloading, and the people that deliver will also be unloading it as well. So that's going to be an extra $100. And then for the initial stocking of all the items that are going into the kiosk, that's going to be $750. And all of that together is going to bring us to our total estimated budget of $20,830. So here we have our Gantt chart, which basically has all of our project tasks and as well as their dates and durations. So if we're going to start off with the kiosk ordering, which is 1 day, and then we have the site prep, which basically consists of making sure the area is clean, putting that signage up, as well as getting the security set up. And that'll also include the next thing, which will be the rough-in electrical. So for the security, we're going to need that electrical. And then that's going to be followed by the finishing of electrical once the kiosk is delivered, and we can finish that electrical. And then what we can do is we can go ahead and get the inventory, and then stock the kiosk. And then that'll pretty much be the end of the project. For our timeline, we actually, what we mentioned before is our buffer days, which is 12. So we'll finish the project a little ahead of schedule. And if any unexpected occurrences happen, then we should still be able to finish on time. So the red lines that we have on the side are going to be the main the main precedences, and then the blue are kind of the like side tasks that we also need to accomplish. So going on to our risk management, what we're going to have are just to mitigate risk. This is more abroad or in general terms, and then we're going to go on to possible possible occurrences that can happen and how we would deal with that. So to mitigate risks, what we would avoid is not following any rules for safety, and we're going to make sure that we follow OSHA rules for safety as well. We're going to leave tasks up to trained professionals and make sure that during each step of the process that it's carried out efficiently as well as properly. If something happens, we will make sure to take care of that occurrence properly and in the most ethical way possible. We will follow any policies and procedures, as said before, and we will try to make sure all parties involved are cared for in a well manner so that there's not any hiccups in what happens. Going on to any possible issues, we have a couple scenarios that we're going to run through. So one of the scenarios is if there's a thunderstorm on delivery day. So what we would do is with our days of buffer, which we can push back anything. So for delivery, we would make sure that they could stay home on the days of that thunderstorm. And we don't expect the thunderstorm to last long, so an extra 2 or 3 days wouldn't be bad to wait. So then when they come, it would there would be no issues there. Moving on to our next scenario of a vegan meal order. So that if we order the wrong type of vegan meals, we order vegetarian instead of vegan, what we can do is continue with our opening. And then if we see that there's a large vegan audience, then we can go ahead and order more vegan meals. And we will make sure to notify our customers the same way. We're going to notify them that we have vegetarian meals and not vegan. And we're going to make sure that we inform them that now we have vegan meals if we see that we have a large vegan audience. Going on to our missing and stolen tools scenario, let's say one of our workers, their tools have gotten stolen. So in the short term, what we would do is we would get the worker tools only specifically what they need. And then because we want to make sure all parties are appeased, we're going to make sure that we work with Mercer Police to make sure that we can find the workers' tools. Hopefully, our security system that we set up earlier is able to monitor the area and we'd be able to get to the bottom of it. Moving on to if our crew is sick and our supervisor offers for her nephew and friends to come work for us, that is unprofessional, so we wouldn't take that offer. And with those buffer days that we mentioned earlier, it would be okay for the sick crew to be off for about a week and then be able to come in after that, and we would still be able to finish the project on time. And then moving on to the thermostat, if there is a thermostat malfunction inside the kiosk, we would make sure not to give out the food that has been contaminated for food safety. and we would most likely um outsource the checking of the thermostat to somebody else, or we can pause the operation until it's replaced. Most likely, just to make sure that it's done properly, we'll pause the operation and make sure a new thermostat is going to come in, as well as checking that thermostat to make sure that the food that comes out is safe for customers.
So yeah, so here are some questions that we expect the audience might ask. The first question is, why kiosk and not something more personal like a store or a stand where you're actually talking to another person? And we think that a kiosk will be a lot more independent and manageable than a store or a stand. You're not having to deal with any sort of human employee, which a human employee could result in um, lower return and a higher risk because you're having to pay their salary. And also, if something happens at the job, you're working with food, then you would be at fault for that and you'd have to pay for that. Another question is, are there any faults to the location chosen? And there definitely are. There might be some issues with getting the kiosk into the university center. It is indoors, and kiosks can be very large. The university center closes at 12 a.m., which could limit access, and there might be further issues that we cannot predict. But all locations have faults, and the university center seem to have the least negative aspects and the most positive ones. And the last question that you might have is, if we propose this idea to Mercer for actual implementation, do you think they would accept? And I think that if we propose this idea to Mercer for actual implementation, that they would have to see a large enough return on investment to consider it. If we could crunch some numbers and show them that they're going to make, X thousands of dollars per year with low maintenance and low responsibility, I definitely think that they would consider it and maybe even implement it.
Going
And
off of
as our, sorry, go ahead.
I was add something real quick to what Hunter was saying. Definitely, return on investment would be a big factor of doing the kiosk, but they have done a kiosk before. So I think that, as Hunter said, if there's um enough return on investment, it would definitely be possible.
And that is our presentation for the Hot Meals kiosk. And if you have any further questions, please reach out.